Bikurim per Gimel Mishnah Aleph. Ketzar mafrishin Bikurim. How does one designate Bikurim? Yerid Adam l'seich sadeu v'roya tein shebikra. A person goes down into his field and sees a fig that's going to emerge. Eshkol shabikar, a cluster of grapes that's going to emerge soon. Rimain shabikar, a pomegranate that's first emerging. Kachre begemi, he ties it with a reed or a ribbon or anything else, so he'll remember that these fruits are going to be Bikurim. V'oimer hare'elu Bikurim, and he says, these are going to be Bikurim. And this is the Kriya Shem for Bikurim, and he doesn't have to do Kriya Shem for Bikurim after he picks them. Reb Shimon Oimer, Afal Pikin Chayzu B'Kariyos and Bikurim Me'achar She'hitlushu Min HaKarka. Reb Shimon says, even though he already said that they are Bikurim, he must be Kriya Shem on Bikurim again after they've been detached from the ground. Why? Because Reb Shimon darshans the pasuk v'lokachta mereishis kol pri adama. Ma b'shas hava pri, af b'shas hafrasha pri. Just like when you bring the pears to the Beis HaMikdash, it's a fruit. So it's a b'shas hafrasha also when it's a fruit. So he says the b'shas kriya shem tzarich sheyiyu haperes b'tolush. When you do kriya shem on the bikurim, they need to be b'tolush also. K'moy b'shas hava. So Reb Shimon darshans the pasuk to mean that you need to do kriya shem for bikurim sai when it's attached and sai when it's detached. Mishnah Beis. And the halach is not like Reb Shimon in the first Mishnah. Mishnah Beis. Ketzad malan is bikurim. When bringing bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash, many people would travel together, like we spoke. It was a process, it was a procession, it was a parade, instead of small groups or individuals traveling on their own. By performing in the mitzvah in a large group, they were Mekayim, the pasuk of Berav Om Hadras Melech. With many people, it brings a kavod to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because we're showing everyone, and we're showing ourselves, we're doing the mitzvah with a big ceremony, it's a big kavod and a hodar for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, Ketzad Malanas HaBikurim, how do we bring Bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash? Kol ha'ayorish b'maimed meskansois li'ir shal maimed. All the people who lived in the towns of the local maimed gather in the main town of the maimed, in the town in which the leader of the maimed lived. What are the mamodos? What are we talking about here? As esrim v'arba mamodos hayu b'Yisrael, there are 24 mamodos, Keneged arba v'esr mishmaros kahuna. Keneged the 24 mishmaros of kahuna in the Beis HaMikdash. V'anshe ha'maimed Yisraelim ha'yishluchim mikol Yisrael. The people who were part of this maimed were shluchim from all around, from all over the place. Lamed ala korbanim ha'kehanim v'alavim sheba'isei mishmar. They would stand over the karbonis with the kehanim and levim from that mishmar. Kolacha b'shabbos hakvola. Each person would take that week. And these people were called the people of the Maimed. The Kehanim and Levim were divided into 24 groups that were called Mishmaros, each of which served in the Beis HaMikdash 1 week at a time. The Yisraelim were divided into 24 groups called Mamodos. Each Maimed of Yisraelim was linked to a Mishmar of Kehanim and Levim. When the time came for a particular Mishmar of Kehanim and Levim to do the Avodah in the Mikdash, the corresponding Maimed of Yisraelim would go to the Beis HaMikdash and attend the Avodah of the Karbonos. The Mamodos were established for the following reason. A person who brings a korban is mechuyev to go to the Beis HaMikdash. Accordingly, every yid should have to be in the Beis HaMikdash every day because there were karbanos, tzibur, that were brought every day, that all of Klal Yisrael, that were brought on behalf of the entire Klal Yisrael. Since it was impossible in practice, so they split up that these would be the shluchim of all the yidden, and some members of the Maimed went to the Beis HaMikdash, and some of them would stay in the shul, and they would fast, and they would daven, that the karbanos should be in stratzah, that the karbanos should be oil al-rotzen. And when the time came to bring Bikurim, the members of each Maimed would gather in one town. They would join there together by the Kehanim and Leviim of that Mishmar, and they would travel from there to Yerushalayim. The Lonan Berchoy V'Shal Ir, and they would sleep over in the town square. They would not go into any houses that they should avoid becoming tamei, because if they would go into a dead body that's under a roof, will be matame people, food, and kalim that are under the same roof. So if you bring bikurim, you wouldn't want to be matame the bikurim, you wouldn't want to become tameh before you would go into the Beis HaMikdash. And in the morning there was an appointed person who was the leader of this procession of the Maimed. When they would wake up, the Reish HaMaimed would say, Kulmu v'nala tzion Hashem el Hashem Elokeinu. Rise and let's go up to Tzion to Hashem Elokeinu. The Mishnah quotes the pasuk over here, and not let Tzion el Beis Hashem Elokeinu, which does not appear in the pasuk, and should therefore be deleted from the Mishnah. As they traveled, they would recite the pasuk. They would recite it from psukim, They that were rejoicing when you were telling me to go to the Beis Hashem. It's interesting because the whole mitzvah, we explained in the previous parak that the whole mitzvah of Bikurim is Saviv, the Indian of Simcha. It's Purpose Simcha, and Einin can't eat it, and Einin can't bring it. It all revolves around Tutach, around the Indian of Simcha. Once they got to Yerushalayim, our feet are standing at the gates of Yerushalayim. The last kapitel in Tehillim, and by the time they would get to the Azara, there was a Gavaldige Hillel, there was a Gavaldige Halal, the Hoidah, that they would say as they were bringing the Bikurim, Meitoich Raiv Simcha. Mishnah Gimel. Hakrevim Mevim Hatein Va'anav, and the people who live near Yerushalayim bring fresh figs and grapes as Bikurim because it's preferable to bring fresh fruits rather than dry ones. But those who live far from Yerushalayim bring dried figs and raisins because fresh fruits might spoil by the time they reach the base of Mikdash. An ox walks in front of them. The ox is brought as a korban shlomim because, as we learned in the previous parak, someone who brings Bikurim must also bring a korban shlomim. Each person owned a chelik in the ox so that the korban would belong to all of them. So, not that everybody, I guess if they wanted to, they could have brought more, but it was a concept that this should be a shlomim for everybody, all being mishtatif in it together. The karn of Metzupai Zahav, and its horns are coated with gold, Atara Shalzayas Baroisha, and a wreath of olive branches on its head. Of all the trees of the Yeshivas Haminim, the olive tree is the most beautiful, and the leaves are the freshest. They would put it on the head of the shore. Hachalil Makal Lefneim Achamakim Karv Yerushalayim, and there was a flute playing in front of this procession until they reached Yerushalayim. And the reason why they used the flute is because it's a very beautiful sound which can be heard from very far away. And it was announcing that the Bikurim procession is approaching. Higiu Karv Yerushalayim. Once they got close to Yerushalayim, Shalchu Lefneim V'itru es Bikureim. Once they approached Yerushalayim, they would send messengers ahead of them to let the people of Yerushalayim know that they are coming. At this point, the flutist stopped playing, and they wait until the officials of the Beis HaMikdash came out to greet them. After they greeted them, they resumed their march, and they continue playing the flute, as we're going to see in the next Mishnah. They would send the shliach out to greet them, and in the meantime, they would put things on top of the baskets to adorn them. Those bringing dried fruits get fresh ones and put them around the rim of the basket, and those bringing fresh fruits put the most attractive ones on top. As I state in Gemara. If they were bringing fresh fruits, they would put the best and most choice ones on top, to showing, sticking out. The princes, the leaders of the Kohanim, and the treasurers of the Beis HaMikdash came out to greet them. According to the honor of those going in is the honor of those going out. The greater the number of people bringing the Bikurim, the greater the number of officials and chashuvim would go out to greet them. Although the Mishnah's literal meaning, the honor of those going in, refers to the status and prestige of the people involved, the Yerushalmi says this can't be the pshat, because when it comes to fulfilling mitzvahs, if somebody's doing the mitzvah, there's no difference between people of higher and lower stature. Anyone doing a mitzvah is considered important and must be honored. Therefore, the Yerushalmi explains the Mishnah as referring to the quantity of people as opposed to the quality of the people. And when they enter the city, all the craftsmen of Yerushalayim stand up before them to show them kavod for people doing a mitzvah. Someone who's busy working doesn't need to stop, and a Talmid Chacham passes by to stand up for him. Although there's a mitzvah that you have to stand up for a Talmid Chacham, you have to stand up for a zaken, but not when you're being Isaac b'malacha. Why? So you shouldn't stop your working. But over here, there was a special chiyuv, more than the chiyuv of to stand up in front of Talmidei Chachamim. The chaviva mitzvah b'shaitim, because there's a certain chavivos, there's a certain love, a certain gishmak to show how beautiful a mitzvah is. B'shas, you're doing it. Mitam zeh, for the same reason, we stand up in front of for a levaya, and also for those that are carrying the child to the bris milah. That's interesting, because people have a minute to stand up for a chosan and kala. A kala, you don't have to stand up for, because there's no din to stand up for the kala. But there's a din maybe to stand up for a chassan. If you say chassan time l'malach, maybe chassan time l'malach only happens later on. But I think the basic teretz that they give as to why why is this only a more recent question is because in Europe and in most other places, by the chuppah most people would stand and they wouldn't sit. So it's bechlal a new thing that people sit by chuppahs. So the question only came up more recently. Fine. Mishnah Dalet. The flute would play in front of them until they reach the Harabayis. So the flute will continue playing. Higiu l'Harabayis, when they reach the Harabayis, Afilu Agrippas hamelech noitel hasal al kseife v'nichnas. Each one of them, even the king, takes his basket of bikurim on his shoulder and enters the Beis HaMikdash. Those who bring bikurim are not mechuyev to personally carry their baskets of bikurim on their journey to Yerushalayim. They can be carried by relatives or by servants, but once they reach the Beis HaMikdash, each owner of the Bailam must carry his basket of bikurim himself, because it says V'lokach hakohen atenem yodecha, which indicates that the kohen takes the basket directly from its owner. The Mishnah emphasizes that even if one bringing the bikurim is King Agrippas himself, who is an exceptionally important and powerful figure who ruled during the period of the second Beis HaMikdash, he must personally carry his basket of bikurim. And if the concept is because of Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita, we know in a few places we find that Ava Mekalkala says Hashura, by Avraham Avinu, so a person should show, even the king should show Chavivos and a certain Gishmak and a Sumcha in doing the mitzvah, Ad Shemagia LaAzara, until he reaches the Azara. Higia LaAzara v'dibra haLevim Bashir. Once he reaches the Azara, the Levim break out in song, and they sing the pasuk Aramimcha Hashem Kidi Lisani V'Loisi Machta Oiveli. I exalt you, Hashem, because you lifted me up, and you did not let my enemies rejoice over me. This pasuk was chosen because of its similarity to the parsha of Bikurim. Just as Aram Yovid Avi, just as we say, Aram Yovid Avi tried to destroy my father, praising Hashem for saving Yaakov Avinu from Lavan, so too this kapitel begins also with David HaMelech saying how HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not allow his enemies to rejoice over him, and allowed us to, and brought us to Eretz Yisrael to be able to be mekayim this gewaldige mitzvah of Bikurim. Mishnah Hey. It was customary to attach small birds, Tayrim and Bnei Yonah, to the baskets. And the Gemara says, the Yerushalmi says, V'lo gabe hasal mamish, you wouldn't put them directly on the baskets, but you would attach them on the sides of the basket, that it shouldn't be metanif, it shouldn't dirty what's inside. And they were brought as a carbon oila. Unlike the Shlomim, which was a chiyuv, these oilas are nedavis. People chose to bring them as a way of enhancing the mitzvah and making more of a situation out of the mitzvah. Masha b'yodam, noisim la'kehanim. What's masha b'yodam? What's in the people's hands? The bikurim themselves are being brought to the kehanim. The Rav explains that what's in their hands is the bikurim that they're carrying, because it says that now the Bailam were carrying them. But the Rambam learns, the Rav quotes the Rambam Pirish HaGazala Shehiviu B'Yodam Sh'Loitalim Acheri HaSalam. The Rambam learns that they carried the birds with their hands because they didn't want to put them in the baskets. They shouldn't dirty the baskets. So they would bring those, Masha B'Yodam, they would give them to the Kehanim, and the Kehanim would bring them, they would give it to the Kehanim as a gift, and they would give it to the Kehanim to bring as Karbanas. But the Rav says, V'li Nira Masha B'Yodam is the Bikurim Shehiviu B'Yodam. Okay. Mishnah Vav. Oideu asal al ksefoi. The basket still on his shoulder. Kairei meigarti ayom l'Hashem elokach shagorma kol haparsha. He reads from the third pasuk. Higarti ayom l'Hashem elokach until he finishes the entire pasuk without any interruption. Although the kohen's taking of the bikurim is mentioned in the Torah between the two parts of the kriya, the kohen does not actually do this until after he reads the second part. After entering the Chatzer and the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash, the Bailam recites the pasuk V'amarta Elav Yigadati Hayom L'Hashem Elokach Kibasi La'aretz Asher Nishba Hashem L'Aviseinu L'Aseslanu. You shall say to the Kohen, I declare today to Hashem that I have come to the land that Hashem swore to the Avos to give to us. The next pasuk says V'lokach HaKohen Atenem Yodecha V'hinicha Elefnei Mizbach Hashem Elokecha. The kohen shall take the basket from your hands and place it before the mizbeach of Hashem. And after that, it says, "Va'anisa v'amarta l'fnei Hashem alekecha Arami Eved Avi." You shall speak before Hashem and say, "The Arami Eved Avi, the Arami tried to destroy my father." The recitation, the Mikra Bikurim, continues into Pasuk Yud. Va'ata hine hevesi es reishis priya Adam asher nasata li Hashem v'inachta l'fnei Hashem alekecha v'shtachavita l'fnei Hashem alekecha. And now behold, I have brought the first fruit of the ground that you have given me, Hashem, and you shall place it before Hashem, and you shall be mishtachava l'fnei Hashem, before Hashem. Bikurim begins in the third pasuk, and it's interrupted in the fourth pasuk by giving it to the kohen. And we continue by reading from pasuk Hey through pasuk Yud. So, Oidei wasal kseifa karim yigadete yamat shegor mekol parsha. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad Arami Eved Avi. Rabbi Yehuda says no. He reads until Arami Eved Avi, which is pasuk Hey, and he reads only the first part of the pasuk. And Higil Arami Eved Avi mered asal me'al kseifa echsei b'sif soisef. Before he reaches the second part, which begins with Arami Eved Avi, he takes the basket down from his shoulder and holds it by the rim. The kohen puts his hands underneath the basket and does tenufa together with him. The owner then reads from Arami Eved Avi until the end of the parsha. He then places the basket at the side of the mizbeach, and he leaves. Okay, so he does the tenufa while he's reading it together with the kohen. Now, according to the Tanna Kama, doesn't do tenufa at all. This pasuk simply means that after the entire passage has been read, the kohen takes the basket for the owner and places it next to the mizbeach, and then he's mishtachava, facing the heichal. And the Tanna Kama agrees that the basket is placed next to the mizbeach at this point, but he holds that this is done by the kohen, not by the bailam. Okay, and while he's still facing the heichal, he walks out backwards, showing covered for the heichal. Now he leaves. He doesn't stick around there because, as a general rule, people didn't stick around in the heichal; they would leave. But in the Medrash Tanchuma state that how much does a person have to pay in order to get into seeing a king? He has to pay a lot of money. He has to go through a lot of officers, file a lot of paperwork. They have to do a background check. But by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not like that. When it comes to Bikurim, all he has to do is bring the Bikurim, and he's Mavakesh for whatever he wants. He asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu for whatever he wants, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Memale Bakashasai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him whatever he wants. The Koach of Bikurim is such that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him whatever he wants. And if you look in the Medrash, the Medrash explains that the Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what are we going to do after the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, when there's no more Bikurim? So he says, even though there's not going to be Bikurim anymore, but we'll still have Tefillah, and Tefillah will be Memakam Bikurim, which is Hakaras HaTayv, and Besimcha also. The whole mitzvah of Bikurim revolves around the idea of Simcha. So L'chayra, the idea of Tefillah, the concept that we have the ability and the opportunity to daven should give a person tremendous Simcha as well. Mishnah Zion. But Rishayna Kol Mishayed Elokor is Kaireh. Originally, anyone who knew how to read would read the parasha of Mikra Bikurim on his own. And if anyone did not know how to read, they would dictate the passage to him, and he would repeat each word. It must be read in Lashon HaKodesh, like the Mishnah says. The same way it's written in the Torah. In the beginning of the Tkufa, the second Beis HaMikdash, many of the Yidden returned from Golus Bavel could not read Lashon HaKodesh properly. So Nimnu Malahavi. In the course of time, however, people were embarrassed because they couldn't read, so they stopped bringing Bikurim, because they were embarrassed to have it known that they were unable to read the Psukim. So Hiskinu She'amakrin Esmisha Yedev Esmisha Enyedeh. To prevent this, the Chachamim were masakin that the passage of Mikra Bikurim should be dictated both of those who know how to read it and those who do not know how to read it. Since everyone should be treated alike, there's no cause for embarrassment. They wanted people to have this experience of coming to the Beis HaMikdash, because as much as the Chiyuv of Mikra Bikurim is in Lashon HaKodesh, but the Tefillah and the Bakasha that you could daven for afterwards is B'chal Lashon that you want, so it doesn't matter. But these people would give up that opportunity because they were embarrassed, because they didn't know how to read Lashon HaKodesh, how to read Lashon HaKodesh properly. Mishnah Ches. Ha'ashirim meviim bikureim aklatzah shel kesef shel zahav. Bikurim must be brought to Yerushalayim and given to a kohen in a basket or another keli. Like the pasuk says, you should put it into a basket, hatana. Should put it in a basket. The wealthy people would bring the bikurim in baskets of silver and gold. They were coated with silver or gold, and the poor people would bring them in baskets of peeled willow branches. In the case of the poor people, the baskets and the bikurim would be given to the kohanim. Only the wooden baskets which were brought by the poor people were kept by the kohanim. The baskets plated with gold and silver were returned to their owners. This is a Mikan Amru. The Rav says, this is where the Gemara Baba Kama says, Basar Anya, Azla Anya Yusa. The poverty follows the poor, so they wouldn't get back their baskets. If I'm not mistaken, the Svarim explain that it's so chavav by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Masha Ein Kain, meaning that, it's but the concept is over here that this is all he has, and he's bringing everything that he has to Hashem with tremendous simcha, and really he really wants to keep the first fruits for himself, but he's doing the Ratzon Hashem of bringing the first fruits as bikurim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that's something that I want. The people that are rich, so they have other agendas. They're not necessarily willing to give everything to give up so much from themselves to the kohanim, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says, that we could, the halach is that we could give back to you. Masha Ein Kain by the Haniyim, it's a bigger schus that their baskets should go to the kohanim. That's why they get that. Mishnah Tes. Reb Shimon ben Nanas oimer ma'atinus habikurim chutz mishivas aminim. Reb Shimon ben Nanas says that we adorn the bikurim even with species other than the shivas aminim, meaning the chiyuv of bikurim is only with the shivas aminim. But one you could put in apples and esrogim. One may also use fruits that grew outside of Eretz Yisrael, despite the fact that they cannot be brought as bikurim. Reb Kiva oimer ein ma'atinus habikurim ela mishivas aminim. Reb Kiva says that the din of Iter Bikurim has to be the same as the Bikurim themselves. The question is why? Because it's forbidden to use fruits that grew outside Eretz Yisrael. Because Rabbi Kiva is concerned that someone who sees fruit around the basket might assume that these are actual Bikurim. So if they don't belong to the Shivas Haminim, or they're from outside Eretz Yisrael, a person might think that the Chiv of Bikurim applies to even fruits that are from outside Eretz Yisrael. So to prevent people from making this mistake, the Chachamim were masaken that the basket may be decorated only with fruits that are fit to be bikurim themselves. As I stated in Yerushalmi. Mishnah Yud. Reb Shimon says, Shalosh midas bebikurim. There are three measures, three different ways of bikurim. Habikurim, the actual bikurim, the fruit that the owner designates as bikurim when he first sees them on the tree. V'taisefes bikurim, which are fruits that he adds to his bikurim at the time of harvesting. The owner picks bikurim that he already designated and adds a few more fruits to the same type. Because it'd be very strange to make this whole big procession for one grape, one fig, one date, one olive, and one pomegranate. So you take a whole bunch, but Ikar bikurim is that first one. And the Taisefes bikurim are the three other grapes, or the whole cluster of grapes that you're bringing. The Itar bikurim. And the decorative bikurim, which are fruit that he uses to decorate the bikurim. Additional bikurim and decorative bikurim must also be given to a kohen who has to eat them in Yerushalayim. It does not have the kedusha of regular bikurim. They may be eaten only by kohanim in Yerushalayim. Taisefes habikurim min b'minoi. Additional bikurim must be of the same type of fruit as the actual bikurim. Ve'itar habikurim min b'she'enei mina. But decorative bikurim may be of a different type. For example, if someone designated figs as bikurim, he can designate only figs as Taisefes bikurim. If you went ahead and designated a different type, such as grapes for Taisefes bikurim, they don't have the status, but they become they assume the halacha of Itur bikurim. According to Reb Shimon ben Nanas, which we mentioned in the Mishnah Tes, one may decorate his bikurim even with fruit that are unfit to become bikurim themselves, like if he wants to bring apples or esrogim. Taisefes habikurim necheles betara. Additional bikurim must be eaten betara when both the fruits and the person eating them are tahar. The same is going to be true of Itar bikurim. Upturim and admai. Additional bikurim is parted from demai. So if a kohen receives additional bikurim from an amaoret, he does not have to separate maises from them. But the decorative bikurim is mechuyev in Mai, so a kohen who receives decorative bikurim, iter bikurim from an Am Ha'aretz, must separate maises before eating them. In this respect, both the Tosefes bikurim and the iter bikurim are different, are chaluk from the actual bikurim. Actual bikurim are completely potter from trumas and maisers, and may be eaten even if you know that there was vadai not separated trumas and maisers. Tosefes bikurim, on the other hand, are basically subject to all hilchos trumas and maisers. Therefore, if it's vadai that the Tosefes bikurim still contains truma or maisers, kohanim are forbidden to eat them unless they separate the trumas and maisers properly. Nevertheless, Tosefes bikurim are potter from demai because it's only the rabbanon. So if a kohen receives additional bikurim from an Am Ha'aretz, the chachamim did not require him to separate maisers, since after all it's likely that the Am Ha'aretz already did so. Iter bikurim are a third category, and they are subject not only to the dinei haTorah of trumas and maisers, but also to the dinei d'Rabbanon of demai as well. So that's the pshat why iter bikurim is chayev in demai. Mishnah Yud Aleph. Emaseh Amar Tosefes bikurim. As we just mentioned, the Tosefes bikurim and the iter bikurim are similar to actual bikurim, that they may be eaten only betara by a kohen in Yerushalayim. So when did the Chachamim say that the Tosefes bikurim is like bikurim? And when do we say that? When they come from Eretz Yisrael, the main part of Eretz Yisrael, where they have a chiyuv bikurim in HaTorah. But if they don't come from Eretz Yisrael, rather from part of Eretz Yisrael that's east of the Yarden, which there's only a chiyuv bikurim only d'Rabbanan, because it's not Eretz Avos Chol V'Dash, so ain't it bikurim, they're not like actual bikurim. Therefore, if the parents that grew on the Ever HaYarden is designated as Tosefes or iter bikurim, it's not going to be subject to the restrictions mentioned above, meaning that it can only be eaten by a kohen in the Beis HaMikdash, but may be eaten by anybody even outside Yerushalayim. Mishnah Yud Beis. Lama Amru HaBikurim K'nichsei Kohen. In what respect did we say? We mentioned in Parak Beis Mishnah Aleph that the Bikurim are K'nichsei Kohen, they're the property of the Kohen. Shu Kohen Mehem Avadam Karkois Behem Tameya. That they're his, that he may use them even to buy slaves or land or non-kosher work animals, despite the fact that Bikurim are meant to be eaten by a Kohen, and these are non-food items. A creditor may take Bikurim from a Kohen as payments for his chayv, and a woman may take Bikurim from a Kohen as payments for her ksuba. Sefer Torah, the same is true of a Sefer Torah, that a Sefer Torah may be used for a chayv, and it may be used for a woman for her ksuba. If a person divorces his wife or dies before her, he or his estate must pay her a certain amount of money. This payment is called a ksuba. The Mishnah teaches that if a kohen divorced his wife, she may take his bikurim as payment. However, this halach is relevant only as long as the husband is still alive. After the husband would die, the general rule is that the yarshim need to pay the ksuba only with the land that they inherited, and which is land, and not with metaltalin such as fruit. The halachas in this Mishnah apply only in the case of bikurim and not ma'aser sheni, since ma'aser sheni does not belong to him fully because there's a restriction. Meaning, even though bikurim also has a restriction, but ma'aser sheni does have some level of kedusha, and it's not nichsei bailam in that sense. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, a nice ela lechaver b'taiva. A kohen may give his bikurim only to another kohen who's a chaver, someone who's careful with the hilchas tumah v'tara, that he eats even his chulim b'tara, and may give them only as a favor, without receiving b'toiva, without receiving anything in exchange. Rabbi Yehuda is teaching two halachas. One may give his bikurim only to a chaver who's always careful with the hilchas tumah v'tara. Since bikurim are not used as a korban, there's concern that an ordinary kohen may not treat them carefully as he should. A chaver, by contrast, can be fully trusted to eat them b'tara. The second halacha is that a kohen is forbidden to sell his bikurim to anyone, and he may only give them away to a kohen for free, without receiving anything in return. The first halacha, which also is giving bikurim to someone who's not a chaver, applies not only to the kohen who received them in the first place, but also to the original bailam. The owner too may give his bikurim only to a kohen who is a chaver. The chachamim say, mishmar, that the owner gives the bikurim to the members of the mishmar of Kehanim serving in the Beis HaMikdash that week. As we mentioned earlier, there were 24 mishmaras, and each week there was another group of Kehanim that was on guard that week, so to speak. They divide the bikurim among themselves, including those who are not chaverim, kikacha mikdash, just like the karbanos that go on the Mizbeach and the Beis HaMikdash are divided amongst all the Kohanim of that week's Mishmar, whether or not they are Chaverim. The Chachamim are responding to the first halacha taught by Rabbi Yehuda. They hold that although Bikurim are not used as a korban, they resemble a korban in the sense that they're brought to the Beis HaMikdash. So giving them to ordinary Kohanim is mutter because they can be trusted to treat them with the proper respect and avoid eating them b'tumah. Here as well, there's no difference between the original owner of Bikurim and the Kohen who receives them. Both are free to give them a Kohen who is not a Chaver. There's another machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the owner of Bikurim may give them to any Kohen he wants, as long as the Kohen is a Chaver. While the Chachamim hold that he may give them only to the Kohanim of that week's Mishmar, who divide the Bikurim among themselves. We finished the third parak of Bikurim, and technically speaking, this is the siyum of Masech the Bikurim, and this is also the siyum of Masech of Seder Zroim. But there's a catch over here. There's a fourth parak of Bikurim, a parak called Androgonus, which is a brisa. There are many different gersais of it, and Mitzvah Hashem, we will learn that in the next year.